good evening, and thanks for tuning into The Vigil with Val. On Wednesday, March 4th, 2026, Brian Mcginnis, a Green Party candidate and a United States Marine Corps veteran who served between 2000 and 2004, interrupted a Senate Armed Services Subcommittee on Readiness and Management Support at the Hart Senate Office Building, Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C. Mcginnis took part in Operation Iraqi Freedom as an 0313 LAV crewman between February and June of 2003. The meeting was focused primarily on military readiness and the U.S. Joint Force, specifically helping to set the tone for the annual National Defense Authorization Act. Approximately 30 minutes into the meeting, Mcginnis, dressed in dress blues, stood up and began shouting, "Nobody wants to die for Israel." Capitol Police then moved to remove Mcginnis, who resisted, ensuing in a struggle. Mcginnis then latched onto a doorframe, prompting Senator Tim Sheehy, a U.S. Navy SEAL on the subcommittee, to leave the dais to assist officers. Bystanders report having heard a loud crack, and Mcginnis reported that his arm had been broken. Let's go ahead and play the clip.
Stand up for America. No one wants to fight for Israel.
My God.
No one wants to fight for Israel.
His hand. Oh, his hand.
Sir. Let go of your hand. Let go of the door. Let go of the door.
The senator broke his hand. A sitting U.S. senator just broke the hand of a Marine.
Sir.
Control your Senate.
Arm stuck in the door. Okay, sir.
A U.S. senator just broke the hand of a Marine.
Hand stuck.
A U.S. senator just broke the hand of a Marine. You're a coward. Punk.
Why are you here? Why are you getting arrested?
Free Palestine, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. Palestine will be free.
Facing 7 criminal charges, Mcginnis is being charged pursuant to 40 U.S.C. Section 510 subsection E2 that states that it is a federal crime to utter loud, threatening, or abusive language or engage in any disorderly or disruptive conduct in any of the Capitol buildings with the intent to impede or disrupt the orderly conduct of a session of Congress. While the public is allowed to attend these meetings, Capitol policy strictly prohibits audience members from speaking, holding signs, or having any kind of demonstrations within the building. Demonstrations are allowed to take place on the Capitol building and their grounds with a permit. Mcginnis is also facing 3 counts of misdemeanor resisting arrest, 3 counts of misdemeanor assault, and 1 count of crowding or obstructing. He could also face charges pursuant to 10 U.S.C. Section 772 that states that veterans are strictly forbidden from wearing their uniform during political protests, demonstrations, or any activity that could imply an official military endorsement of a personal cause. Mcginnis has pled not guilty to all charges and is currently placed on administrative leave from his position as a senior firefighter in Raleigh County. Mcginnis has held several past demonstrations, previously utilizing the public comments portion several times at Raleigh City Council in 2024 to advocate for an end to Israeli aid. He also joined the Freedom Flotilla in 2024. This flotilla claimed to carry 5,500 tons of food and medical supplies and attempted to break an Israeli blockade. Upon inspection, only 1 of the 3 boats in the flotilla carried any supplies, which approximated roughly 2 tons of food, less than a single standard aid truck that enters Gaza carrying 20 tons. Mcginnis has stated that his activism is driven by his family. His wife Hanadid Ali is an American Palestinian, as are his 4 children. He says they have been a victim of 3 generations of oppression, despite the fact that his wife and children were all born in America, and there is no official confirmation of them ever having visited Palestine. After returning from the Iraq War and marrying his wife, McGinnis had converted to Islam. His mother, Mary Lou McGinnis, has stated that his anti-war activity had significantly ramped up ever since his marriage and his conversion to Islam. As a Green Party candidate for the U.S. Senate in North Carolina, McGinnis claimed the incident has only strengthened his resolve. In a post on X, he wrote, "I've been running long before this, and yes, even after breaking my arm, standing up for what I believe in, it's only made me more determined." His actions have elicited numerous debates online as the clip was shared on social media between Democrats, Republicans, and this time around, veterans. We're going to move to the public portion section, and we're going to see what some of the people of the public had to say about this incident. So, Chaya, welcome to the panel. What did you want to say on this particular topic?
I've gotten the opportunity to learn a little bit more about Brian Mcginnis. Some good, some bad, and I've come to a point where I feel like I'm able to draw a bit of a conclusion as far as this man's character, his political motivations, and why he acted in the way that he did and why he did what he did and interrupted the meeting in that nature.
So what do you specifically think that his use of the uniform to represent his own personal political belief was appropriate?
Absolutely not. Of course. I understand why he did it, but is it appropriate? Absolutely not. It's also illegal. So, no, not at all.
And then what do you think his underlying motivations marginally are?
Well, obviously, he is running for a Green Party seat in the Senate. And, the Marine uniform and his history serving the country in his mind, adds to his credibility and his eligibility. And therefore, I can understand his motivation, why he would do that, and the overall motivation of why he would wear his uniform.
So overall, you think it's a political stunt in order to gain support?
100%.
Okay. And then what would you say about his past actions, his past demonstrations that he's held?
I don't believe that the past demonstrations that he has been a part of do not align with American values. He is heavily pro-Palestinian, and we understand that the PLO and Hamas do not align with the American democratic values that we take very seriously. And we know that his wife is Palestinian, and I believe I read an article where his mother was interviewed, and she went on record saying that he did not become pro-Palestinian until he met and married his wife. And I think that his motivations are not in direct alignment with American values. It's troubling and it's scary, in my opinion.
Now, I am also familiar with that particular quote from his mother. It wasn't until after he came back from the Iraq War and actually converted to Islam that he really began his anti-war demonstrations. Do you feel like what he may have seen overseas staunchly influenced him to make this switch?
I believe it could be a factor, as we've seen a lot of soldiers deal with mental issues, okay? PTSD, and they have problems sort of reacclimating themselves to civilian life. But I don't believe that is the sole motivating factor. Not at all.
Now, in about 2004, he actually signed up. That was one of the first times that we seen him publicly appear. He signed up, or excuse me, not 2004, 2024. He had signed up for the Freedom Flotilla. That was the flotilla that was delayed until later in 2025, that claimed that it was carrying about 5,000 tons of food and medical supplies. You'll also recognize another controversial public figure from the same exact flotilla, named Greta Thunberg. That's the same float that he was on. And then when it arrived and they did an inspection, they found that the flotilla was actually mostly empty and that it carried roughly about 2 tons of medical supplies, which is far less than a standard aid truck that would go into Gaza on a regular basis. And when they interviewed several of the flotilla members themselves described the aid as being symbolic. If his main message and his main goal / approach is to provide aid for the Palestinian people, do you find it odd or controversial that he would align himself with this particular incident that is supposed to apparently only be symbolic, if you understand my meaning? Like, if he really cared about delivering aid, don't you think that when he showed up to take part in the flotilla, and I believe it set off from Turkey, that he would have looked around and asked everyone, like, okay, where is all the aid? Like, why are we not bringing more, especially when our flotilla has a capacity for, thousands of pounds of aid?
Right.
Why do we only have 2 tons? Do you find that to be controversial, and do you find that to be counterproductive in the message that he claims to be supporting?
Well, I believe the entire concept of Palestine and the pro-Palestinian movement to be symbolic. And this pro-Palestinian advocacy never seems to expand outside the symbolic parameters that are these sort of, that are these, sort of, I'm trying to think of the right word. They are trying to say something. They're trying to prove a point, but they don't actually do anything. They're virtue signaling, okay? So it doesn't shock me. That's what I was trying to say. The entire pro-Palestinian movement and these types of events are merely for the purpose of virtue signaling. So no, it doesn't shock me that they wouldn't make sure that there was enough materials on board, that they would cross-reference what would be needed. And the entire pro-Palestinian movement is nothing but a gigantic, symbolic, virtue signaling belief system. It's not rooted in reality. So no, it's obviously, it's worrisome that he wouldn't ask, but it doesn't shock me at all.
All right. Yeah, I feel like that's a great point. And then lastly, what would you say about his approach in the actual committee room coming in? This is going to be a two-sided question here. One, what are your thoughts on his sentiment that the American people don't wish to die for Israel, and framing the conflicts in current-day Iran as an Israeli war? And then what do you actually think about his approach? Do you feel like his approach did a service or a disservice to the message that he was trying to share?
In the long run, I think it's a disservice. obviously the stunt that he pulled and his behavior, it was smart, knowing the public arena that he is trying to gain support from. So obviously he has victimized himself. He broke his arm. He seems to be standing for a righteous cause. And it was quite an intelligent move, partnered with his Marine, military uniform, to be, breaking into a meeting and to be violently, thrust out of there, to have his arm broken, to be screaming free Palestine. No one wants to die for Israel. The entire formula seems to be very effective amongst Democrats and leftists and a particular group of people in America. He's gained a lot of support for his antics, and I think he'll continue to gain support.
Okay, that's a great point. So you're ultimately framing it as a intelligent propaganda stunt in which he appealed to the public's emotional response instead of their factual response, and used it to garner support.
Right. And I think what I didn't touch on, I made another point that I didn't touch on. In the long run, I don't think it's beneficial. However, in the immediate interim, trying to gain popularity and momentum for his own political aspirations, it was a very intelligent formula.
Understood. And then the last part of that previous question, the way that he frames the current conflict in Iran, do you align with his sentiment that it is dying for Israel? Do you believe that this is simply an Israeli conflict?
No, of course. Listen, his framing of this conflict is right in direct proportion and right in alignment with the pro-Palestinian leftist parameters of how they have framed this conflict. But we know that the IRGC has been posing a threat internationally to the United States, to President Trump for a very long time. The IRGC has been a threat to the United States for decades, to their own people for decades, and I don't believe that the way he has framed this conflict being, an Israeli conflict, or that we're fighting on behalf of Israel, is even remotely rooted in reality.
Okay, so in response to our last question, I would like to turn your attention to some relevant facts that I find to be disparaging when it comes to him, particularly framing the conflicts against Iran as a solely Israeli problem, other than, completely outside of the nuclear threat that they pose, and with the recent uncovering of documents by Mossad, that even being completely besides the point. I'd like to point your attention to July of 2024, when a Pakistani national named Asif Merchant, he was arrested for actually trying to recruit hitmen. Those hitmen were actually undercover FBI agents. And he went out of his way to hire them to actually assassinate President Donald Trump. They have video footage of an interview with him after he was taken into custody, where Merchant ultimately admitted to being trained as a spy by the IRGC. He claimed that he was pressured by a handler in Iran to carry out the particular plot. When they looked at the banking info, prosecutors presented evidence that Merchant's cousin, who was an operative working with Iran, actually provided the funds to Merchant in order to pay these hitmen. And then when they arrested him, they actually found a handwritten note in his wallet that was, written and contained code words for particular phrases of the plot, like stealing documents, staging protests to make a distraction, and then the ultimate assassination. And then in a trial that was held in February of 2026, there was a hidden camera video file that was released that showed Merchant. Ultimately, he was using a vape pen on a napkin as a kind of pointer to show the particular positions of crowds and the president, and using it as like a piece to lay out his plot. And then there was another attempt actually in November of 2024 where the DOJ, who were the prosecuting party, from details that were released by the FBI, who were the investigating officials, they unsealed charges against someone named Farhad Shakari, another IRGC asset who was residing in Tehran. He also informed the FBI during recorded interviews that an IRGC official had tasked him on October 7th, 2024, with a plan to assassinate President Trump within 7 days. And he told them that if he couldn't formulate a plan immediately, that the IRGC would ultimately pause the attempt until after the election period, because they believed that Trump was going to lose and that he would actually be easier to target. Now, Shakari had actually been previously deported from the U.S. Because he had actually been identified as a long-term asset, someone that had been used by the IRGC for an exponential period of time to recruit like criminal associates during his time in America, actually from prisons. And he would recruit them for things like surveillance and assassinations. So when we look at these particular incidents, I feel like that goes, and like I said, that's outside of the entire nuclear problem with Iran that we're currently dealing with. Correct. I feel like that goes a long way towards specifically stating that this is not just an Israeli concern. And then,
well, of course.
What would your thoughts on that be?
Listen, the IRGC has been screaming death to America for decades. So America has always been included in their hate stampede and the hate that they direct at Western civilization, democratic society. Everything that America and Israel stand for is the opposite of what their regime stands for. So this has always been a joint hatred. It's never been singled out toward Israel. We know for decades, we've known for decades that their venom and their disdain has been for the superpower, the Western democratic superpower that is the United States.
All right. Well, thank you for joining. I appreciate your time.
Thanks,
I
Sal.
hope you come back in.
Okay, this was great. Thank you.
Cognitive, welcome.
Yeah, I wouldn't have worn mine. Not for my statement. My military job was strictly that. It's not tied to my political views.
I gotta say, I completely agree. Can I ask what branch you served in?
Yeah, I served in the Army from 08 to 16. I was at 13, like 30.
You're more than well aware that while you're serving on active duty, you fall underneath the UCMJ, and the UCMJ has particular clauses within it that prohibit this kind of action.
Yeah, it is very explicit and clear. Even demonstrations are frowned upon. When you get your clearance, I mean, they even ask these questions about demonstrations and if you're part of any groups. I mean, yeah, you can't do it. Just use your uniform for what it's, payday activities or military balls, right?
Correct. So one of the questions that comes up, and I actually wasn't too familiar with this myself, so I always try to do my research before I go ahead and speak on a subject. So something that comes up in this discussion is after an individual is separated, whether or not these kinds of actions are still prohibited or whether they violate your freedom of speech in the First Amendment. And so I actually did a little bit of digging, and I found out that it doesn't really matter whether or not you're separated. The only difference that comes into play is what portion of law that you're judged under. So if you get separated from the military and you have a retired status, the fact that you're retired and you're receiving retirement benefits, it actually keeps you underneath the jurisdiction of the UCMJ, which is something I didn't know. But so if he was receiving retirement benefits, this would be in direct violation of the UCMJ and his retirement benefits. However, even if you're not receiving retirement benefits, this is also something I wasn't aware of. There is actually a federal statute that prohibits this kind of activity as well. So even if you've gone back to civilian status, this is still prohibited on a federal level. But, personally, I feel like wearing the uniform, it doesn't fall under freedom of speech, and actually it would be almost in a violation of it. Because when you wear that uniform, you are representing the entity that uniform belongs to. So I myself was in the Marines as well, and by him wearing this uniform, he's almost using it as a political ploy to almost state that his opinion is synonymous with that of the Corps, which not every member feels the way that he does, yet he's essentially making a demonstration and speaking for us. What are your thoughts on that?
Same thing. I mean, dude, I work for a company. I do TikTok lives. The company does not subscribe to my personal decisions or my political views, so I remove them from my videos or conversation. It's not for me to decide whether everybody at the branch or the company I work for agrees. You got to keep it separate. It's like if you were wearing Nike, you're not standing for Nike, you're wearing their crap. But if you're trying to sit here and say that all military veterans feel the same, it'd be wrong.
I thought that the way that he went about it was just diabolical. Not, even if I would have respected his stance a lot more if he had came in and maybe, this is against committee policy too, but if he had come in holding up a sign that stated his opinion and stood in the back quietly, I would have had more respect for it. Or even if he interrupted the meeting and made a statement, they asked him to leave and he calmly left, I would have had more respect for it. I still wouldn't agree with his actions, but I wouldn't necessarily judge them as harshly as I am now. But the combination of wearing the uniform to make a political statement and associate it with a branch that he doesn't speak for the entire, entity of, and then refusing to leave, causing a scene, fighting with the police officers, I just found that to be...
Yeah, I agree, dude. Sorry, I don't know, I'm having no fun. Yeah, I appreciate it, man. That's good. Hey, man, I'm gonna, I've been wasting so much time. I'm gonna go ahead and get to work. I appreciate it, brother.
Yeah.
What is up? What is up? Wait, so I know someone who was there, and I have his video from it.
Oh?
There were also a group of high school kids that were there, and like they were like in the back row, like the row when he was like being like escorted out. And he like would have fallen on them and it could have caused them to like get hurt. That's the first thing. The second thing is he's about to get sued. This was not a private, but this is one of the like senator committee buildings basically in Washington DC, and it was like whatever, they were like the Senate, like they were talking, and it wasn't supposed to be like a free-for-all, like the people in the crowd can say anything. So when he started saying stuff, they asked him multiple times to leave, and he wouldn't. So they had to escort him out. Wait, you're not allowed to protest in uniform?
No, absolutely not. So that's what I was talking about with the last guest. A lot of people, the debate is, so when you're in the military, you fall underneath something called the Uniform Code of Military Justice, UCMJ for short.
Okay.
And the UCMJ is almost like federal law for the military. Like each branch has its own particular guidelines. Like, I don't really know what it is for the Army or Navy, but I know in the Marine Corps, you can't walk and talk on the cell phone. You can't walk and chew at the same time.
And this is in uniform?
That's in uniform.
Okay.
Correct. So, like, we have particular codes of conduct for each branch, but the UCMJ, you know, in the same way that states have their own laws, but in the same way that federal law applies to all states, the UCMJ applies to each individual branch of the military, regardless of which one it is. Now, according to the UCMJ, you are not allowed to participate in any kind of political protest, make any political statements. I probably wouldn't even be discussing this particular situation if he hadn't worn my uniform as, you know, a political statement. Not even the fact that I disagree with his political statement, but, you know, I don't like when someone goes out of their way to speak for other people. And that's essentially what he's doing here. He's trying to make a direct correlation between the uniform and his political opinion. And he's trying to use it to like give himself an elevated status, which I'm not a fan of. So, yeah. So you're not allowed to speak for the majority. You're not allowed to speak for the entity.
I wish like normal, like law-abiding citizens like myself, I wish we were like more educated on like the military and like, I don't know, the American education system needs a 360. Broken. Yeah, and the video clearly shows him like putting his arm there. Like,
yeah, well, he I don't think he specifically
no, he didn't mean to, obviously, but like
he was just trying to hold on. I mean, if your particular issue with it is in regards to their use of force to remove him, officers absolutely have the ability to use of force to forcibly remove him from the committee because he's causing a public disturbance. Did they need to break his arm? I would probably say no, but at the same time, I don't think it was intentional. I think it was something that just happened in the scuffle. But at the end of the day, if he respected himself and his uniform and the meeting and even respected his point, because obviously people are not going to think as much of his point now, considering he can't follow basic rules and act professionally, you know, he wouldn't have fought them. The fact that his arm got broken is directly in correlation to the fact that he decided to resist. Well, anyway, Stammen, welcome. What did you want to say? What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I was when I first saw this, I was a little shocked because I I'm pretty sure, like you said, I was at the time, because I wasn't 100%, but I was pretty sure that you're not allowed to do what he did the way he did it. Also, the comment sections on these videos are hilarious to me, because they are blaming the senator for breaking his hand, when by the time the senator even got there, he was actually pulling his hand out of the door. So like, I don't understand that logic that people are going with, but I just think that guy was kind of kicking and screaming, and it didn't really do much besides get like some stupid video for people to spread around the internet, and that's about it.
Like, this kind of goes into what I was getting at earlier. You probably weren't here, but like, if he cared enough about his message, he would have made sure that he shared it in an appropriate manner, because acting like this is a disservice to his own opinion. When people see this video, especially prior service members who know that this is prohibited conduct, they're not even going to, like, most people are going to start tuning out anything that he has to say, because they, you know what I mean, like, they're already appalled by his choices and his behavior, and so you're discrediting yourself and you're doing a disservice to your own opinion. He could have had a great opinion. It could have been based in logic and fact, and it could have represented the majority of Americans. And even if all of that had been true, the majority of people aren't even going to listen to what he has to say because of his display of conduct.
I think that, as well as whoever that idiot was that was screaming the entire time, the senator just broke his arm.
Oh yeah.
It really came off like, okay, that guy, the reason why he's screaming that repeatedly is because he knows this is content. He knows exactly what's going on, so he kept screaming it to make it true, when even the video evidence shows the senator showed up to actually, at that point, help the guy get out. But it's so weird. I think this does shine a light to this whole situation on people don't know how to legally protest anymore. It's actually insane. Like, we had that woman that blocked what's her name? The good lady. I mean, people are saying what she did was completely legal, and I'm like, what are you talking about? The people thinking that you can block traffic, protests in general in the United States is completely illegal 90% of the time. But yeah, people think that like all these illegal ways of protesting are like completely justified and well within our rights, and then they get arrested and they're shocked, and I'm like, learn your rights, I guess.
Think it's gonna happen? Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I'm gonna jump down, Steele. It's good talking to you.
Likewise. Shit show, Raw brother, how are you?
Good, bro. Rah rah. My thoughts is this: I think it was an embarrassment to our country. I think it was an embarrassment to my beloved Corps. I think he should be tried by the UCMJ, and I think he needs to fucking take a trip to Leavenworth. And I think whenever he can learn how to be a fucking Marine and a fucking American, then he should be released. And you did it in front of all of our generals and shit like that, and you think in the state of our country that we're in now, you think that made us look fucking powerful? You think that made us look like, hey, we all back our fucking country here? Not made us look weak. And if you don't think our enemies aren't sitting somewhere watching this shit, then they're crazy. He ain't speaking for me, because I'll dust my boots off and go to Iran right now. Like, you're out of your fucking mind. You need to have, like, I don't even look at you as a fucking Marine, dog. Like, you don't even rate to wear my Eagle Globe and Anchor that I have tattooed all over me. Like, it should be cut off of your body if it's on you. And that's exactly how I feel about that. I think that is treason what he did. I think he should be tried as treason 100%, and I think he's a piece of shit.
What's up? How you doing? What did you want to say?
Yeah, you have a point that America shouldn't fight other countries' battles, but you forgot that, yes, it's not the American war, it is an Israeli war, but you forgot that America is fighting not only for Israel, it's fighting for the free world. Because if you forgot that Iranian regime was first-handed responsible for the killing of U.S. Marine in Lebanon in 83, I think, or 84, if I'm not mistaken. He is responsible for every terrorist act in the world. not only against Israeli but against American, against Europe. And I think it's, as said, as an Israeli, is a disgrace to United States of America, to United States Marine Corps, to what he represents, because you have a lot of history, and you have a lot of interesting history for the Marine Corps. Ever since the Continental War between America and United Kingdom, for Independence War, until our modern day. So it's a lot of proud history. And let us not forget that America and Israel are working together. It's like so it's a symbiosis relationship between United States and Israel.
You know, Yosef, I would like to make a clarification on a point that you made. I would definitely disagree that this is, well, not disagree because you went on and said it later, but this definitely isn't just an Israeli war, and that's what a lot of people are tending to not understand. If we look at the history of Iran, they don't exactly have the best track record. And what we're doing is we're going out of our way to be fair with them, which is why we signed a nuclear deal with them in the first place. They you know, essentially they claimed that they have the right to power their nation with nuclear power. We made an agreement with them that allowed them to have nuclear facilities. We allowed them to enrich their uranium to the level that is necessary to have nuclear power, which, if I recall correctly, it's about 3.5%. And then even if you go upwards for dedicated and specialized research facilities, you only need uranium that is 20% enriched. You know, we put these things into place. They were abiding by it. However, ultimately what happened was Mossad came out and they released a bunch of files that were located in Tehran that showed that they being Iran, had lied to the national committees, saying that they weren't looking for ways to weaponize this technology. And what it was based on is the fact that if they weren't looking to weaponize the technology, they would have destroyed the documents, but instead they hid them away. They kept them in a secret facility away from prying eyes. And the assumption that came with that is that they are intending on using these documents to weaponize the uranium, to create, missiles that are capable of carrying nuclear warheads, etc., after the deal expires. And so ultimately, that's why Trump pulled out of the original treaty that we had with them, because he sat down and he was like, look, this deal has an expiration date. They hid away plans that points to them wanting to weaponize in the future, and the deal doesn't cover their construction of ballistic missiles at all. It also doesn't cover their use of proxies to wage war in the surrounding areas. So based on all of that, he came to the table and said this needs to be reworked. And what did they do in response? They began enriching their uranium. And I think the last time I read, they were at 60%, with trace particles having enrichment up to 80%. Weeks away from having uranium that is enriched enough to create a nuclear warhead. So I don't feel like it's just an Israeli war.
That's right. But my point is, again, not out of disrespect for the U.S. Marine Corps. I have a lot of respect for U.S. Marine Corps, because when I served in the Army, we have a lot of co-relationship with the Marine Corps. Was awesome. So to see that, I don't know if I can call him a human being, putting this uniform with a lot of history and just spit on it, it's I don't know.
All right, now we're going to be moving on to our next caller, ADH Me. Welcome. What were your thoughts on this entire incident?
Okay, so where do we start? Let's start with the actual incident, right? So, Brian Mcginnis said that the people who basically talking about the veterans who were talking about their dissatisfaction of him using his uniform for his little, protest that he did, he called them uniform nerds. And I see it like, look, I'm not a veteran, but the respect I have for the veterans goes a long way. And for him to call his fellow brothers and sisters uniform nerds for caring about, it's fucked up. It's really fucked up. I feel like everything that he did was just uncalled for on that day. From the outburst all the way down to having to have them break his arm for him to get off the door. Like, that was uncalled for. It didn't have to go that far. He purposely made it go that far. And to me, that was just, it rubbed me the wrong way.
I want to know whether or not you feel like he may be biased by the time that he spent serving in the Iraq War, and I'd like to particularly point your attention to how the Iraqi War, and specifically Operation Iraqi Freedom, was kind of laid out and conducted. So during the course of Operation Iraqi Freedom, they actually had something that was called the Hearts and Minds Directive. It was a counterinsurgency strategy that was used by the U.S. and coalition forces in Iraq. And the specific goal of the Hearts and Minds Directive was to win the support of the local population so that they could show that U.S. forces were there to help and not just to occupy. So troops were instructed to use the minimum amount of violence necessary to avoid alienating civilians. They were trained in Iraqi customs to show respect and build rapport, like removing sunglasses when speaking to elders, or, understanding the local social hierarchies, handing out candy and soccer balls. And then during the actual course of the operation, they frequently interacted with civilians during things like patrols. We've all seen video footage during those years of troops like playing soccer with local children or handing out gifts like snacks, like chocolates and etc., or socks. And then some of these cases, the soldiers really formed like genuine bonds that they kept going even long after their service. At sometimes they would eat alongside the locals and have like a full spread meal with tribal leaders. They also worked hand in hand for things like logistics and intelligence. They had to work with local interpreters, Iraqi soldiers, police officers. And so what this ultimately did is it very much so ingrained any of the soldiers or Marines or what have you that served in Operation Iraqi Freedom. It very much ingrained them in the society of Iraq. And you'll find that anytime U.S. soldiers travel to a foreign country, that's actually something that's still done. We're often taught how to interact with the locals. We're taught the laws and things that we can and cannot do. For example, in some countries, it's considered offensive to point the bottom of your feet at people while sitting. So, they will have an entire PowerPoint slide filled with these different social points like don't pass anything over the head of another person because it's considered to be disrespectful. Don't make comments about this particular person. When you go to this particular place, it's considered customary to finish all your food. Like, this is something that's usually done, but it's more so out of respect for the local customs and to not leave behind, a negative connotation when it comes to military forces. And so what my question is, with this being the approach that we used for a particular goal of counterinsurgency, do you feel like these experiences and this approach may have made Sergeant McGinnis biased and overly empathetic to where he's now carrying out these demonstrations and these breaches of uniform code and federal law? Do you feel like that influenced his current day position more than possibly even the marrying of his wife?
Yeah, I feel like they go hand in hand. I feel like there's this love he finds for the people, but then it's like you almost look at the people that he associated with when he was on his tour, and you're like, maybe they're a little too extreme for me. I don't see myself being like that. But when he came to this Palestinian movement, it's like, I like that. Like it's rebellious. It seems like it's very suitable for him. And on top of it, you have like Dearborn, Michigan, with a Muslim mayor. You have Zahar Mamdani here in New York City as a Muslim mayor, and like for him to be the first converted Muslim to be appointed into office, it's going. I'm sure his following is like, yeah. Go, do it. It could be it's almost as if it's everything that he's ever wanted right now. He's getting attention. He has friends that he thinks are his friends, but they want something from him right now, and that something is to get as close as possible into the White House, as far as like into our government, because this is the whole strategy of the Muslim Brotherhood, right? Infiltrate our system and what better way to do it than to infiltrate it through our own people? Basically make it our own United States citizens, and even better, a United States Marine, and turn him Muslim, and not only turn him Muslim, but turn him into something even better, which is a Muslim politician. I feel bad for him because I feel like he's getting played, and he doesn't even see it. He's just a puppet, and it's I don't like to I don't like doing this, but like I see the way he moves when he's with his wife, and I feel like she has such a whip on him that it's scary. It's really freaking scary. And what will be even scarier is if for whatever reason they decide to actually arrest him and sentence him, that whole society is gonna just lose their minds, because like I said, we're taking away from them, right? Us doing that, arresting him, putting him away, would be taking away the guy that they're depending on to destabilize us.
So ultimately, you feel like his time in Iraq made him overly empathetic and sympathetic, and the cause is using him essentially as a puppet. They seen that they found someone that was not only an American citizen but a former combat veteran, and they found that this person was sympathetic to their cause, so they are utilizing his former status and his ambitions of political office to essentially destabilize the United States.
Exactly.
Okay, understood. All right, well, that's all we have time for today. You are actually going to be our last caller, but thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming up and sharing your opinion.
Yeah, man. God bless America.
All right, take care.
Take care.
Spartans! What is your profession?